Hello! I am so excited. It is Milestone Update 2. Milestone Update 3 day. We got the brand new Beastieball update today, featuring a whole lot of new stuff, including, I'm trying to get my headphones out from under my rolly chair, including a whole bunch of new Beastie art, which is what you can see on screen right now, and new music, as you can probably hear on stream right now, all sorts of stuff, extremely exciting stuff, but this will mostly focus on balance changes and such, although I am going to go over everything, obviously. So, first of all, we have art for a lot of beasties. We see Zephyr animation complete, Rodillo animation complete, Daredillo animation complete, Skorock cleaned up poses, not animated yet, but Boldler has its animation complete, which makes sense because it's one that appears on some more story teams, so it makes sense as to why they prioritized that. Also, obviously, it'll show up in PvP and such. Millimine animation complete and Troglum animation complete. Not the metamorphs of these two yet because they're later in the game, but these two appear in the Jasper Mines, so it makes total sense for them to go with that. I actually have Beastieball open, so if I turn that away, we can just hop into here. Ooh, the lighting changed. I had heard rumor of that, but either way, look at these creatures. Boldler skidding around, Rodillo just rolling. Millimine's idol is so cute. Gosh. Okay, let's get him into the light a little bit more. Like, some of these animations we already had, but, like, they're so awesome. I love Millimine just sort of moving around, like, flexing its antenna, Troglum bouncing the little pebble on its head. Zephyr also just being generally majestic, because it does that. This is such a beautiful creature. Boulder sort of shifting its weight around, moving its decoy. Let's see if I can get a Daredillo in here as well. Where am I looking? A little bit higher than this. There we are. Add you to the team. And they'll be here shortly. Riddle is sometimes falling asleep for a bit. I didn't even notice that. Yes, Craig, I know there's a balance patch. That's literally what I'm talking about on screen right now. There we go. Oh my gosh, the roll. The roll is incredible. I love it. Just absolutely raring to go at all times, stretching out. Big fan. I'm so glad every time we get new Beastie art because these creatures are so beautiful and have so much personality, and I'm really excited. Anyway, that's not what we're here for. Well, we're here for it, but it's not the main thing we're here for. We're mainly here to talk about balance. So, first of all, 50 out of 106 species are marked as complete. Sorry, I needed to highlight that. New stuff. This is a big one for PvP, so while it isn't a balance change, there is a new gold sponsorship opportunity. The fitness sponsorship from the gyms are now offering like a higher tier sponsorship. What this means is you can, if you have this sponsorship, which you get by hanging out with coaches and, you know, playing the game, being social, learning about the stories of the coaches, you can actually purchase some useful items such as tea leaves, spa salts, and what's the other one? Conditioning passes with regular money rather than sports points, which really reduces like the tower grind, which was previously a big barrier for entry into PvP. There is still definitely some barrier to entry with the move tutoring features of the academy requiring those sports points, and still in the case of some being quite expensive. But overall, especially the spa salts just being purchasable with regular money is going to make PvP so much easier to get into and continue doing once you've got a long way into the game, so that you don't have to basically keep grinding. Anyway, there's also recruit condition streaks, which I haven't learned much about, but basically beasties get higher level and you start earning more money for fulfilling recruit conditions, from my understanding. So you can grind money a lot quicker, basically, which helps a lot, obviously, with building those PvP teams. New story content. You can max out your hearts with Celia. I am going to be doing that later. And a new character can be rematched after completing the main story. That's Barnes. We'll get to that after talking about everything else. Huge visual effects update. Added effects animations for various effects that can trigger during sports. This includes boosts, feelings. Every single feeling has its own like unique effect. Boosts and deboosts have like sound effects and stuff. It's super exciting. Again, something I can potentially show off a bit later. But very exciting. Environmental improvements, additional environmental details have been added around Begonia. Obviously, there were also some changes, such as here in Quartz Canyon. Like the lighting has changed and it's a lot more like orange tinted, which is fun. Makes the area feel more unique. But yeah, Begonia got a little bit of a visual overhaul. It was already pretty good visually, so there's just like a bit more, especially in the areas west of it, I believe. Music updates. You'll see here, Barnes's battle track got added, in addition to the one we're listening to right now, Hidden Gems of Amberstone, which is in Quartz Canyon. This one I am super excited about because it means that in speedruns, a big issue I found with them is we come here first. We go through Quartz Canyon almost immediately, like a minute into the run, and there was just no music until now. So that's a lovely change for just the presentability of speedruns. And yeah, just very exciting. This song is beautiful. It feels very chicory to me with some of the chord changes. I love it to death. I could go on for ages about the music, but again, that's not what we're here for. New lobby game mode, random teams, fun little added thing. So you can like play randoms with your friends without going and setting your team to random in the team setup. Team titles added, sure. Upcoming bash, yep, there's a bash next weekend right after Christmas Day on the 26th through the 28th. 4 teams this time, which is fun, and it's going to be interesting to see some of these beasties not able to be used together, especially like Hopper and Mongus, which sometimes like being together on drum teams, although both of them tend to be just the drum setter, so not necessarily a huge issue. But overall, gonna be super fun. So here we are, balance changes. This is the real meat of the update for PvP and this video in particular that I'm recording. It was initially going to be a small balance update, and then it was very much not a small balance update. So, new status effect. Well, let's talk about this first. Let's read this off. Our main focus on this update was to lightly touch beasties that are overperforming or underperforming to bring their success rates more in line. We also have changes here that aren't intended to make beasties strictly stronger or weaker, but just to help every beastie fulfill a more unique role in the meta. In the process, we wound up making minor adjustments to nearly every beastie family in the game. As I said, this update was going to be small, and then it wasn't. Okay, so first thing, this was always going to be part of the update if the player base liked it. Which is the new status effect, or new feeling, which is Weepy. Weepy is a negative feeling, meaning it is relevant for things like Nerve Strike. It is, however, not protected by drums, which is interesting. Weepy prevents the effect of boosts. It does not prevent boosts from getting applied, so moves like Energized still work. Toppler still recognizes the amount of boosts that are on a beastie. But while a beastie is Weepy, any boosts will not like increase damage or defensive stats. It counts up after every offense turn, much like Sweaty, but goes away when the beastie tags out. Basically has a sort of like wipe timer the same way to Sweaty does, but you can negate it much more easily, and it doesn't linger throughout the entire match just while the beastie is on field. So if you take it off the field, they'll get over it. There was an experimental testing phase where this feeling was called Sadness, and I want to document that history a little bit. Myself especially, but a lot of other people expressed some like significant issues with the flavor of it being called Sadness, and so the solution was change that to Weepy, which I am a lot happier with, as basically it emphasizes it a lot more as a physical ailment, and also not one that is inherently like inherently a negative thing, because you can feel weepy due to quotes in some of the experimental changed patch notes. Basically, you can feel weepy because you're sad, you can feel weepy because you're happy, you can feel weepy because you're cutting onions. It's a physical condition rather than an emotional one, which I think is super important, and I'm so glad the devs took all of our feedback in that regard into consideration, because I think also weepy is just such a fun name and it feels so unique as opposed to just like generic sadness. So I love that. Anyway, continuing on. If a beastie feels 4 weepy or more, they will burst into tears and immediately lose 100 stamina. Basically, it's added as a tool. I guess we'll get to that in a sec. If a beastie that's weepy tries to feel jazzed, the feelings neutralize each other. Jazz won't be applied, but weepy will be cured. Same with vice versa. This, I think, is one of the biggest impacts of weepy on the metagame, because jazzed has been quite prominent lately between battle cry, between set gaining some prominence again, a pipe change, which we'll get to later, fetch on fetch'em, so on, power forward, lots of ways jazz gets applied. Quickset has gained a lot of popularity, especially with the double block. And there's a defensive move that applies weepy, which we'll get to in a bit, which basically means you can negate jazzed on defense, which was not something you could do before with any of the tools you had available. Previously, your best chances for like preventing like boosts from an offensive side were Cyclone, forcing the BC off the field, and Patience, clearing boosts. Neither of those cleared the damage boosts. Neither of those cleared jazzed as a feeling, so that damage boost would always remain. This finally provides a way to deal with that. It obviously can't deal with both the jazzed and other boosts at the same time, which I think is all in all a good thing. So, Weepy joins the game after extensive testing, very true, and feedback and experimental updates. It offers another tool to slow down hyper-aggressive ramping, notably just the ramping, not like other hyper-aggressive strategies that just rely on raw damage. But beasties that could boost a whole lot and live for a few turns are sometimes an issue for certain teams, and this provides another way for like those sort of mid-range teams to combat teams that are very ramp heavy and rely a lot on boosts. Pressures the opponent to give up a defensive action tagging out or face being wiped. A lot of the time on offense, you do kind of just want your BC to be wiped, unless they're obviously on like full stamina. But if they've taken some damage, sometimes you can use that to your advantage a little bit. It's a slower paced control tool for teams that want to out-sustain opponents. For the time being, this effect is somewhat underutilized in how many plays it traits and interacts with. That's fine, in my opinion. We don't want to push the mechanical density of the game much further with the current set of beasties, but it does help us carve out some new design space for future content. So yeah, overall, it's not many places yet. Well, I suppose we can jump to that in just briefly. Where are they? Where are we? They're in here somewhere. New Stinger. This replaces Numbshot internally. It's now 65 power and the target feels 1 weepy, so basically has the same effect it did before of virtually clearing boosts or preventing boosts, but now actually prevents any future boosts as well, which is going to make it a much more effective move in the long run. Level up, Illigus and Hydrolm. Hydrolm might use this sometimes. Illigus is quite a good user of this. It works incredibly well with Trapper. Friendship, loads of Mind Beasties here. Garud, Platypulse, Platian, Noizard, Varkabon, Voltoxin, Crawler, Debugly, Gremler, and Shloom. Any of these could use this. I potentially see, out of these, I think the most likely ones to slot it are probably mainly Noizard, because it likes having that kind of utility attack, so this provides a nice alternative to something like Rattle. Voltoxin is actually pretty good with it, because it can sort of play a slower offensive game with things like telekinesis and boosting itself up while chilling in the back row and soaking up damage, applying Weepy to the opposing team and forcing some of those tag outs. I think other than that, most of these beasties probably aren't going to touch the move all that much. Maybe Gremler will also do it for some of the same reasons Noizard will, but either way, with all that being said, this is a very good move. Being able to apply Weepy in a way that isn't provocable isn't able to be denied via using provoke, causing angry like spitball or such, is it's a very powerful tool. Gloom, the defensive play, target feels 1 weepy. In experimental, this was initially 2. The issue with that was it immediately ticks up after being used because the offensive turn for the opponent ends, which meant that basically it forced the opponent to use their next defensive turn tagging out. So it got nerfed down to 1 weepy, and I think that's a much healthier option because it means you can't like keep looping Gloom and just forcing a tag out every turn unless the opponent wants their beasties to be wiped for 8 turns on the bench. Via level up, Mystic will certainly use this sometimes. Diabloceras will certainly use this sometimes as an option to Cyclone. Mystic again as an option to Patience. Friendship, Plumask gets this, may touch it, may use other things instead. Waddle gets this, probably not going to use it much. Orgella gets this. Orgella is a big user of this so far. I've seen some real good sets, basically sort of like a twist on the usual Relentless Blaze Sting, going Relentless Blazed Gloom instead, and as per usual, it's a menace to deal with. And lastly, Squimmage, which probably won't touch it much. Sky asks in chat, would Weepy clear on Superorganism proc? Yes. Orgella is incredibly good into Weepy. Obviously, it will, but at the same time, it is also a useful tool against Orgella, because if you force the Orgella to be on full stamina and cause Weepy to it, it won't be able to utilize any of its blaze boosts until it basically cycles Superorganism again, which requires 3 blazes and is overall not all that easy to get off if your opponent doesn't want you to get those blazes off. So while Orgella is super good into it, it is also still quite good against Orgella. Like, the boost prevention is super useful. And lastly, I lied, there was another move, or no, okay, right, this is also a defense move, there's no support move. Soliloquy, defense, every fielded beastie feels 1 weepy. This is like a Perish Song effect, which Greg really wanted in the game. It's a fun and interesting move, particularly on one of its users, Plumask, which can now self-activate Grit, which is pretty huge because previously Plumask has had a real hard time activating Grit with anything other than Hunker, which has its downsides due to, you know, preventing movement on the defense turn. Self-activating Grit is, like, very huge for pretty much any beastie, especially with Plumask, which has, at full investment, 140 spirit power in PvP. Just very powerful. With that said, there are some other tunings in the update, which I'll get to, which sort of tone it back a little bit. Hopra also learns it, getting a strong utility move for teams that want it. And Conjar is the only level up learner of this, just another disruptive tool for the #1 disruption beastie. Either way, this is a overall very positive change for the PvP scene, I think, overall. Just like interesting new mechanic, which is going to bringing new dynamics to the game. So very exciting to see how it like takes shape in the whole meta. Obviously, when we were testing it, it felt a little overwhelming at times because so many people were splashing it on their teams in testing because, you know, we were stress testing it. But I think it's going to settle down a lot and end up in a much like smaller place in the meta, but still present, and overall having a positive effect. Sky Blue does note that like the insta-wipe is a little sad for Iron Man play, but basically in Iron Man and, you know, casual play, you can always combat this just simply by tagging out. So it's just another like small thing to play around, which shouldn't affect runs all that much. Anyway, next thing, and this is the other real big change of the update. Rally has been nerfed. Spirit attacks now, instead of getting plus 50% damage, just do plus 15, sort of similar to how Cheerleader works. Other stuff unchanged. So mind attacks are still doing less damage and still ticks down by 1 at the end of each turn. Comments on this: we love Rally and how it enables an all-out offensive style, but it has always given Spirit's highest high as an edge that made it very challenging to play into, and for some players felt stronger than other types. Yeah, Rally was probably the most complained about playstyle for a good while in the PvP scene, just because of how much Spirit attackers could boost themselves and then further boost themselves with Rally, shore up some of their weaknesses with Mind Defense bonus, and yeah. This iteration cuts the value of Rally on higher damage attacks, good stuff, but increases the value of low power attacks more so. We hope this enables all-out offense gameplay, but not as oppressively, while also creating space for more bulky defensive playstyles that use lower power utility attacks, such as Tornado Ball, Cook, and so on, which we'll get to in a little bit. This comes alongside some corresponding power changes to Spirit's highest utility plays. There are some interesting things here, in that, again, those lower power moves are now improved while Rally is up. So things like Tornado Ball, Cook, Exert, unactivated Grit now are more effective than they used to be in Rally. But again, those high power moves like Activated Grit, Super Commit, Scream are all gonna probably be doing less damage on average, which is gonna make Spirit overall less oppressive. Very good change for the PvP metagame. Sad for the Axolotl speedrun, because the Axolotl speedrun relied pretty heavily on Rally to boost its damage. We haven't really had a working route for Axolotl in quite a while, but this is going to make it a lot harder for Axolotl to compete with the raw speed of Kitschik in terms of like starter race potential in the future. So a little sad on that front, but you know, I'm going to hop into the routing mines at some point in the future and we will figure out how that goes. Overall though, fantastic change for PvP. PvP is, after all, the most important balancing part of this game. Like, if PvP is balanced, then the casual experience, I think, is worth shaping around that somewhat, because casuals won't really notice the differences as much, because, again, they can make all those balance changes to encounters and such, which we'll get into in a little bit. So, on to trait changes. First ones, both Boldler. Boldler now gets super armor instead of armored. Its pre-morphs still have armored, but super armor here is the same thing, defense times 1.5, but now when stamina is at least 3/4 filled. This means it is active through 3 turns of Dread. It is active through 1 turn of double sweaty or a turn of single sweaty, but not 2 turns of single sweaty. It means that low power utility attacks won't break the armor. 3 layers of traps do 24 damage in stamina, which means that you'll still be at 76, more than 3/4. Super armor is still active. This is a fantastic change. Boldler armored in general always felt super rough, just because a lot of teams like running a bit of passive damage, like Nettle, Traps, Dread, Sweat, and those would all, you know, poke through the armor, and then Boldler would just not have armor anymore until you could either heal it up or let it wipe. And now it's going to be a lot easier to run sort of more stally builds with the Boldler, which I think is super exciting. Second trait, Steadfast got removed, which I'm a little bit sad about, but it's for a new and interesting one called Decoy. When at the net and not tough, important clarifier there, all attacks go to this beastie. So basically, you can sacrifice the additional defense bonus provided by super armor to instead basically force Boldler to take hits for whatever else is next to it. Doesn't matter where the other beastie is on the field, Boldler will receive the attack, even if it's targeted at like an empty lane. It's not noisy, so it's not prevented by Dread. But again, importantly, when not tough, so it can't simply like get tough and then waste opponents' offensive turns as much as it likes. This is an interesting one. Redirection has always been a point of contention in PvP. I think this one is relatively okay because Boldler has a lot of trouble investing. Like, it can invest super hard into its defensive stats, but if it does, it's not gonna have much offense to go with it. With that said, enables super fun stuff like High Slam and Ricochet to be able to be used a lot more easily. We'll get into Ricochet a bit later. With like double support moves, which is always super fun. And can also protect like a frailer beastie, which is in the back, or enable like double net playstyles, which is super fun. If you have a super frail beastie that's at the net next to Boldler at the net, then Boldler's always going to take the attack, and your Crab Array, your Surveys, whatever else is there is safe for the turn, barring a like non-redirectable attack. So that's super fun. Yeah. The comment is, Boulder is a beastie that has never had a proper clear game plan to build around. Slight debate there, in my personal opinion, but it had proper game plans, they just weren't all that good. And that's been reflected in lethargic usage statistics. True. We've given them a complete rethink this time around to help them establish a unique tanky supporter role. So yeah, super excited to see the Boulder glow up. This is gonna hopefully give it a lot more niches on PvP teams, and yeah, overall just really excited. Neural Net walked back the easy receive effect added in the previous patch. It now does not get an easy receive off every mind move. Good change. It really did not need the buff it received last patch, and yeah, straight improvement. Platypulse was... I don't want to say public enemy number 1, because we'll get to public enemy number 1 of last patch later, but definitely public enemy number 2. So yeah, overall, good change. Watchtower. This also goes hand in hand with the Ricochet change. Again, I'll get to that later. Watchtower, when not tough, instead of just in general, receives attacks in place of adjacent allies. In the previous balance patch, we tried introducing a defense reduction to Watchtower in order to rein in its exploitability. This had the intended effect of curbing its effectiveness, and that was reflected in usage and win rate statistics, but it didn't make the trait any more fun to play, was boxed in as something used only for risky offense support, and introduced unintuitive damage calculations with an awkward 20% conditional damage adjustment. Removes its single most annoying interaction of tough redirection, thereby allowing it to be more simple and effective in every other context where it's also just more fun to play around. Overall, this is a buff to a lot of Watchtower playstyles, which kind of needed the buff, as Greg says here, Greg and Damien. It's interesting that it's allowed to be a lot more of a defensive tool right now, because previously, as mentioned, it was really enabling just super offensive playstyles like telekinesis users, which, to be fair, it can still help with. Telekinesis users, stuff like Protector for folks, just anything that wants to really ramp a whole lot and just not take damage. With that said, I'll jump quickly to a couple other moveset changes, which are down below. I guess we'll mention them later. But Demolipede and Fetch'em, the two Watchtowers, both lost their boosting pass. Demolipede lost Tactical Pass, and Fetch'em lost Faith. Both still have Forward Pass, but that one's not able to provide like permanent boosts. That's only moving them to the net, and obviously moving them out of protection of the Watchtower. So their ability to ramp has just been... Their ability to allow their ally to ramp has been tuned down a lot, which I think is super healthy for the game, because playing into teams which had one or two Watchtowers and a ramping beastie next to them was just kind of not fun sometimes, so this is a fantastic change. We will see if it turns out to be too oppressive defensively. I have a feeling it's probably not going to be, especially because, again, Watchtower beasties, which previously liked to really click shields, can't do that without also giving up the ability to redirect attacks to themselves. So there's no wasted offense turns anymore. All right, Overwork, nerfed. Attacks now do the same amount of damage, 1.2, and cost 15 stamina instead of 10. This one, as someone who used Castle Elite all over PvP, is a very validated change. Castle Elite with Overwork was kind of a monster. I top 3'd a recent Big Moon Bash with it, just off the ability to sort of do a whole lot of damage and block or shield itself. This is going to make it just have a bit harder of a time sustaining itself while using Overwork. With that said, this is going to be real hard on the speedruns, and I'm going to have quite a bit of rerouting to do in some important fights, I think. Hopefully not that big an effect, and we're going to be able to play around it, but at least in terms of any percent, this is going to significantly change the Kitchik route, I think. Which in some ways could be a good thing, because Kitchik has been the de facto best starter for speedruns for quite a while. And I'll be interested to see if the speedruns become more competitive because of this change and Kitchik's struggle to sustain itself. Notably, Refresh, which previously healed 15 stamina, which was more than Overwork lost. Refresh now won't allow you to shield a second time, like shield while on 1 HP if you had previously shielded and lived an attack on 1. I'm explaining this incredibly poorly, but hopefully you get the idea. Basically, our strategy of using Refresh in the speedrun to shore up Castle Elite's health is not going to work as well, so we may have to return to the drawing board a little bit. And I also use that in PvP, so I'm a little sad to lose that strategy here and there, but all in all, definitely a very validated change by just how good and oppressive Castle Elite was for building teams. Next up, Vampire, buffed to 1/3 of damage dealt from 1/4 healing. This is not as significant as it sounds. A lot of the time it's gonna maybe increase the healing by like 6, 8, 10 damage. Not gonna be a huge impact in PvP. I think it'll make Vampire a little more, feel more powerful in PvP contexts. I'm a little scared for the speedrun because we do see a Vampire on Dominic's Lunaptera, so we will see how that affects things. Hopefully, it will not cause issues. Remains to be seen. I'll get to that. Either way, just a nice little buff to a beastie that a lot of people didn't really think needed a buff, but according to the win rate statistics, it was apparently one of the saddest trait beastie combinations in the game, so, I'm not going to complain that much. Vampire is a fun trait, and this allows Lunaptera to play that really sustain-heavy playstyle even better in the Dread teams it likes to run on, or in non-Dread teams. Miracle Play buffed. Since Brosleiden got smooth, it has barely ever run Miracle Play. It's now allowing Freeball to be an attack with 75 power, which is very high. This is going to be a threat to casual players, or would be excuse me. It is not going to be a threat to casual players because Miracle Play is a recessive trait right now for Leo Bro. This actually doesn't affect the casual experience at all because Tangled is currently a Leo Bro's default trait, and Miracle Play is recessive, meaning you have to spa salts to get it. This is gonna hopefully just make Miracle Play a lot more usable in PvP. It's gonna be super interesting because it'll allow those really supportive Brosleiden sleds, which don't slot a different attack, to be run, which I think is super interesting, and now it's gonna be able to do some more damage. Overall, good change. Lastly, Determination, now also triggered by Weepy. This also goes for Grit. Just a little bit of a bonus to Goliath, in accordance with the new status effect. Anyway, moving on to moves. New play added, True Strike. Body attack, 85 power, ignores traits. There was a whole lot of testing in Experimental around the issue of body teams not being able to break through Intangible, especially when paired with a Gremlin with adaptation, thus meaning body attacks did no damage to anything on the field. This is mainly a response to that. And it's been added to a lot of body attackers which previously didn't have a super strong body attack that was necessarily worth using. Delusia gets it. Delusia's best body attack previously Demolish, which is useful, but since Delusia likes to be on teams with field effects, especially like particularly Dread teams, this gives it an attacking option, an all-around attacking option, which isn't Demolish. Supalero gets it. Supalero had Thump previously. I think it might not have Thump anymore, which is fine. Just gives it a nice attack that, you know, has some additional usage. Fun stuff. Also added to Fetch'em. Body Fetch'em didn't see that much use. Magpike. Magpike is a big one. Magpike and Maraptor had Stomp, so maybe a little more reliable, but Magpike previously didn't have a super reliable body play. Its next best ones were like Power Sap at 75 base power and Spike at 100, but restricted to the net. This is going to allow Magpike to run one attack body sets, which I think is a huge deal for body Magpike, which previously was quite hard to justify because of its necessity of running two attacks basically to have something that can serve and spike. So overall, really good add to Magpike. It's a threat with trusting now, which I'm a little excited about. I love Magpike. I have a soft spot for it because of its previous usefulness in the Build It speedrun. Obviously, there's another counter to trusting now in Weepy, so there are more ways to play around it, which is also good because Magpike with good attacks is known to be quite scary. Armantis also gets it, another tool for body Armantis. Conjar gets it, tool for body Conjar. Conjar is often a beastie that likes slotting into body teams because it gets confident pass. This gives it another option. And lastly, Hydrome, another one that really appreciates having a nice, just consistent attack. Overall, a lot of beasties here that are not super high in the body attack department. It wasn't given to any super high ones. It was initially on Bealb for a bit in experimental, but Bealb quickly proved to be a little too strong with it. So that was, I believe, the only beastie that lost it. It wasn't given to any beasties with higher body attacking stats or that had plays that didn't need it, like Thump usually. Aside from giving body yet another answer to intangible, it also gives a much needed utility play with decent power to several beasties whose offensive potential has been underutilized up until now. Things to know about True Strike. It works basically the same way as Maverick, so any trait that activates on hit, any trait that might redirect, such as, you know, the recently introduced Decoy or Watchtower, again, ones on hit like Fetch, Agile, Bouncy, all of those are ignored by this, so it's really actually a very fantastic play for body attacking teams all around. We're gonna see this play a lot in the meta, and I think it's a very welcome addition because previously there have been like some team varieties which have been incredibly hard for body teams to play into because of those traits that, you know, activate on being hit. This will just like give some of these lighter body attackers a way to combat all of that and a reason to be picked over the heavy hitters like Castle Elite, like Riplash. So overall, yeah, big fan. Stinger, we talked about already. Gloom, we talked about already. Soliloquy, we talked about already. One last new play in Hum. A support play which just boosts spirit power by 1. Since the Excited Pass changed to granting Jazzed, as they're saying, they felt there was a missing space for an easy low-level play that some beasties could use to power themselves up, which Spirit is very known for doing. While we see some applications for this on high-level teams, it isn't a super high-value play, and we are hopeful that players can build with it without shaking up the current balance of Spirit offense. I love this play. As a spoiler alert for a little later in the patch, Hopra and its Pre-Morphs actually lost Excited Pass entirely. So this gives it a fun little way to like power it up as it is said to do at the very beginning of the game. When you start this game and you get starter selection, Axolotl's description is likes to power up. And this gives it a way to do so, which is super fun and feels really in line with it as a beastie. obviously loves singing. Humplet has hum in the name. Kaleidarn has wings which flap really fast and create a humming noise. Also getting it, Crab Array, super fun. Spirit Crab has previously been like really hard to run because it doesn't have the same tools as Body Crab, lower spirit attacking stat, no juggle. So that's super fun. Conjar gets it. Literally hums. That's all I have to say on that. Orgella gets it. Interesting. Allows Orgella sets that aren't running Blaze to potentially power themselves up. I still think that Blaze is going to be far and away the best Orgella set. But I suppose it likes having it around, and casual players might get more use out of this once you don't recognize just how valuable Blaze is with Orgella, so you know that's a good change. And Skullgr gets it. Not really relevant for casual. It may run this sometimes in PvP. It is a perfectly serviceable spirit attacker. I think most of the time it's probably going to run other more utility moves though. So yeah, as the devs say, probably not going to shake up the current balance all that much. And the point of the main concern here is going to be the use of this move on Hopra in particular. Humplet and Haliath, more accurately, won't see that much mileage out of this move that couldn't be done by Rally previously. Hopra, again, won't see much mileage other than what could be done by a teammate clicking Rally, but it does have its own way to power itself up right now, so that's going to be maybe warranting of some attention, but I think it shouldn't end up too broken. So yeah, very... just like a nice little interesting slot that gives some Spirit Beasties away to power up. Overall, probably not going to be too impactful. And a great change for the casual players, potentially also a great change for the speedruns. It gets this by level up, and I'm assuming it's going to be pretty early. So it'll be interesting to see how that slots into Axolotl routes. Ricochet changed. It is now 110 power base, no multiplier, only used at net, and only used when ball is not hittable. This is a change I'd been preaching for flavor reasons for a little while. I am glad to see it come into play. Basically, the entire thing about Ricochet, which made it so, like, devastating a lot of the time, was the fact that you could just use it whenever, and it was a really powerful, it was a perfectly fine, like, just raw damage attack, even if you didn't get hit. Now you have to get hit to use it, so basically it retains a lot more of that mind type flavor of requiring a little more thought to use the play effectively. It does mean that beasties that use it are even more incentivized than before to run multiple attacks, like a different attack that can serve or hit from the back row. But I think that's fine because, again, it's a very powerful move. So if you want to eschew other attacks and just go with this one, then you can do so, but at some risk of not being able to serve. Yeah, intended to be a powerful attack that hits a bit outside the curve of typical mind attacks, and we hope to preserve that. Certainly working. This new iteration is meant to be simpler while also making it a bit more reliant on planning and strategy to make full use of. Worth noting, this will be a bit lower. Armantis actually lost Ricochet because of this change, because it really doesn't synergize anymore with Armantis' traits at all, other than Monster Block if Armantis, like, doesn't block the correct beastie. I'm a little sad about that, but Armantis was by far, like, the strongest abuser of Ricochet in the previous patch, other than maybe Platypulse against specifically Mind teams. So, you know, overall, I think this is definitely a change for the better. And yeah, exciting stuff. Glad to see the flavor feel much more real, because obviously, if a teammate is volleying a beastie to me and I just, like, put up a hand to have the ball go over the net without actually knocking it anywhere, it's not really going to be very powerful. Whereas Ricochet was clearly always intended as a move which is like, you are right up at the net, blocking the attack as it comes across the net and sending it right back at full force of whatever the opponent sent at you. So yeah, flavor, great. Grit, changed to 55 power from 60. there were a lot of complaints about Grit. Greg has mentioned that he thinks Grit still should maybe be 60, so we'll see how it fares at 55. If it doesn't fare all that well, maybe it'll go back up. More changes on this later, just with regard to how Grit has been activated. Obviously, Soliloquy is around for any beastie, but especially Plumask now. There's a chance that it may stick like this. There's a chance it'll maybe go back up to 60 in the future. We will see. And yeah, now activates from Weepy. Next up, we see Tornado Ball down to 50 power from 60. This is to basically sort of neutralize the change of how it gets affected by Rally. Since it's such a low power attack, the plus 15 damage rather than plus 50% was actually going to start having it deal more damage than it did before under Rally, particularly on Hopra. Other beasties that used it probably wouldn't have been anywhere near as much of an issue, but Hopra was like a big issue. That thing loves running Tornado Ball, and so having it not be as strong in Rally is just a nice little nerf to the extreme Rally teams, while overall I think giving a little bit of a boost to the less powerful Rally or Tornado Ball users, such as like Collidarn. Cook also gets similar treatment down to 50 power, just making it, again, a little bit less effective on those Rally teams. And it was always fantastic on Spirit teams as well. Twist down to 30 power from 40. I think this is a good change. This one wasn't an experimental at all, but Twist was something we complained about a whole lot with regard to like telekinesis, Debugly, and Barkabond. I think this is a decent first change, just meaning that while beasties can still click Twist every turn, it's not going to be doing quite as much damage on its own, so it won't be able to make significant amounts of progress, because previously Twist from the front row at like +1 or +2 was starting to do like 45, 60 damage. This is going to mean that those strikes that were doing like 45 or 60 damage are now going to be doing like 35 and 45 respectively, meaning that ramping with telekinesis on Barkabond and Debugly specifically will not be as oppressive, because like their damage prevention by way of applying Shook is not going to be like making as much progress on its own. Excited Pass removed the stamina activation requirement. There was a lot of talk about how Excited Pass was basically just built around Hopra previously, so that Hopra couldn't use it in high spirits. Now that Hopra doesn't have it anymore, we'll get to that in a little bit, basically it can be like Dig used to be. And I think this is overall a good change. Its distribution has not really changed much from what it used to be. Not as many beasties get it as used to get old Dig, so I think this is overall a very good thing. It's going to allow Excited Pass to be a lot more usable on those beasties which were not named Hopra. Cover and Pipe both get pretty significant revamps. Cover can now only be used at the net, but gives a defense boost in addition to shifting the beastie to the back row. I am failing to sit properly. This is super fun. Cover is previously a move which had almost no use in PvP. Now allows beasties to like boost their defenses, which is super nice for especially offensive beasties, which like going up to the front row and maybe don't want to be there permanently and would like to get to the back so they can survive another hit. This effectively like doubles your defenses, because the +1 of being in the back is in addition to the +1 of that the move offers. So that's super fun. Like if you take 60 damage from something at net, shifting to the back previously, you'd take 40 and die. Now you're going to take 30 instead and survive. Really fun change. Excited to see some uses of this in PvP. Pipes change. Shifts ally to back row, same as it used to, if successful. So if the ally is shifted to the back row and they weren't already there, the ally feels jazzed. Really fun change here. This is going to be real interesting, because Pipe was a move that had a very niche use in PvP and enabling specifically like Riplash, which had trait dance Shy onto itself to start clicking launch every turn. So that strategy is going to become better, which I think is really fun because it's such a cool strategy. But maybe worth keeping an eye on how good it is. But with that said, super fun because basically you're giving up the front row without or you're moving a beastie back from the front row so that they have higher defenses while not actually reducing their damage at all. And it's an additional play that can apply Jazzed, which is useful for curing Weepy and beating defensive ramp, which isn't really too much of an issue all that often, but can be a little bit of a struggle in some cases, like when you're facing a Debugly that stayed on the field for a while and gotten a bunch of boost from Study, or a team that's been using Call Out and Hunker a bunch. So Jazz can allow you to help like punch through that by ignoring the boosts. Distribution was rethought quite a bit. We'll get to that later. But yeah, overall, great change. Love it. From my understanding, or what other people have said, more accurate to what a pipe volley is in volleyball. So that's fantastic. Exhaust change makes the user feel 3 wiped instead of 4. Exhaust was a move that after it got changed from Doze was kind of not really seen much in PvP at all. This is a good change to basically make it more usable. Your beastie will get back up sooner, and overall a super good thing to use for more defensive teams. Big fan of the change. We will see how stall teams fare in the upcoming few months. Clear field nerfed back to 8 from 10. It was previously 8 a few months ago, but people started realizing how good 10 stamina to every member off of 1 support move was. And basically, it started getting used just as a healing move rather than a field clearer. So tuning this back to 8 just basically means it's a little less powerful for keeping your bench healed. It can still do that, but basically means it's harder for those super defensive teams, types that like running full defense invest in controlling the field. Makes it a little harder for them to keep their benches healthy without something like Torch Pass or Chance or Exhaust. And also really emphasizes clear fields as a field clearing move rather than a heal spam move. Still, honestly, good for heal spam, just not as oppressive as it sometimes could feel a little bit in previous patches. Torch Pass, nerfed again, now lowers max stamina by 20 from 10. A lot of good players have been running 1 or 2 Torch Passes on their teams, especially Dino is, of course, the most noteworthy one as like the top-ranked PvP player. He would often run 2 or even 3 Torch Passes on the same team. This just punishes the overuse of this move a little bit more. I still think it's going to be really good. Because again, healing a beastie that's on the bench and otherwise wouldn't be able to switch in is super useful, and overall you're still getting a beastie back. You're still getting the beastie that Torch passes back with 80 at the end, so it's still a net gain. It just means it can't be looped quite as much, which is good. Hex change. It is still a support move. There was some defensive testing. There was a lot of defensive testing on this move in experimental, and this is what it eventually landed on. It's now a support move, and it's Mystic's own trait as well as the target's trait changed to Haunted, which basically makes the beastie always feel 4 tired. Always, the keyword always here means it can't be healed by chant. It can't be healed by shake off. Obviously it couldn't anyway because you can't use shake off when you're tired, but chant is the main one, so basically chanting it off doesn't work. This beastie will have to switch off the field in order to get rid of this tiredness, which I think is super good at basically enforcing the idea that Hex is a move that is supposed to be able to kick an opposing beastie off the field in exchange for keeping Mystic off the field. Part of the issue with iterations in the past, previous Hex was super powerful because of its ability to wipe Mystic and basically function as exhaust and get Mystic a full heal after it was hit in a couple turns, and just continually loop it, apply tire to the opposing team. So this overall is a great change. I think there were some really, honestly, bad iterations of this play and experimental, but it took some testing to figure that out. So like, I'm glad we tested them all and learned more about this game for it. There was a version of the play, which was a defensive play, which wiped a beastie, which was effectively you have to tag this beastie out immediately or you're losing a point play, which created some really unfun 50-50s. There was also a version of this where Haunted was always feel 1 tired or feel +1 tired at end of turn, meaning it could be chanted off. And since Mystic had Echo Strike, that meant you could sort of chant loop Echo Strike and put the opponent into a lock where their beastie was basically, both of their beasties were basically always tired if they weren't prepared and playing around it, and that's just an incredibly unfun situation. So I think this is overall a very nice little endpoint for the move. Forces the beastie off the field if they want to do anything, while also forcing the Mystic off the field and keeping that tired in place for a few turns, meaning that, you know, if I use Hex on a super boosted beastie, I'm going to, or like a super powerful beastie that matches up really well into my team, I'm going to be able to keep it off the field for a couple turns. The original spark for Hex was wanting a play that could cast Wiped on a beastie. That didn't work out. We've added it on other forms, such as the self-sustained tool Exhaust, and come to realize just how wildly abusable this play could be. Yes, this new design still should be a cruel and powerful disruption, but it's less free to click and overall has a lower impact on both the user and the target. So Hex is not going to be public enemy number 1 the way it used to be. Great change. Heat Wave. Massive change. This one went through an experimental change. All of experimental, this move was instead like only usable at net. It's been changed now to be, instead of a defense play, a support play, meaning it can't be clicked immediately on counterserve. The initial thought behind the only use at net change was so that it can't be clicked at counterserve, but a lot of Heatwave players, particularly Zonk, found that it was incredibly hard to actually use at all, because of that requirement to go up to the net and then take an attack at the net without blocking. With that said, it now being a support play means it's vulnerable to things like being tornado balled off the field, being spitballed, being provoked in the case of using it later in a match, but also provides some like nice distinction between it and Heat Up, which is of course still a defense play. The previous iteration was often used on the first defense turn of the game as an easy counterserve strategy to put instant pressure on the opponent and set up devastating combos, those being like a Grit Dugout, typically Grit Dugout, Moist Mudsley as well. This new iteration as a support play cuts into its ability to mount an offense or healing at the same time as this play is run, basically meaning you can't use an offensive support move or volley to like boost up that Grit user or such, because you're having to spend an offensive action on using Heat Wave. And also ensures that the user's team ticks sweaty damage before the opponent. This is a big change, making it just a touch more costly to use. Basically, if you use Heat Wave, you are taking damage first, as opposed to the opponent immediately taking 20 damage right away at the start of the game. Unconditionally, they have no way to prevent it. This also means that things like Shanty Tort Anchor now match up well into Heat Wave because they can set up drums before Heat Wave is used. Obviously, the Heat Wave user themselves can do something like Clearfield to get the drum off the field and then click Heat Wave, but in that case, they're devoting their attacking turn to clicking Free Ball. So it's just real interesting. I think it's going to play a lot more fun and interactive than previous Heat Wave did. We hope to see this play used more for stall and slow offense teams, or as a mid to late game clincher that requires a bit more thought and planning to execute while still exerting huge pressure on the game's engine. I think this is a fantastic change. This one was sprung on us with the new update. It was not in experimental at all, and I'm a big fan. Lastly, Wall, the move that applies 2 block from the net, no longer costs 10 stamina. Good change. There was no reason for it to cost 10 stamina in the first place. It was a move that really felt not worth running because that second stack of block would typically only prevent basically 10 damage. And so if you're losing 10 stamina to prevent 10 damage, well, then what's the point of not just clicking normal block and saving the move slot? Anyway. Last stuff to go through. Beasties. Kitchik Ostracite and Castlete with the overwork change. Plays added. Shake off. Self-healing play. Heals 20 damage and clears any feelings from itself. Super fun. I love this in flavor for these beasties. Just in general, it feels like a move they should get. Tweaked level up plays to improve their single player experience and make them a bit less linear for new players. This is going to change the speedrun very slightly. We get launch a little bit later now, I think. Or maybe we don't and I'm not remembering. But overall, they learn net rush later, which doesn't really matter for speedruns because currently we're actually running flex on Jack 1. And yeah, it basically means there are more different routes to take through the game with regard to your Kitchik's moveset, and I think that's fun. And again, not having huge effects on speedruns, which I'm glad about. Axolotl, Hop Song, and Hopra, they obviously learned Hum and Soliloquy. No longer have Excited Pass, as I mentioned, and their level up plays got tweaked to presumably add Hum. I haven't actually checked yet. Shugo, Supossum, and Supalero lost Thump in exchange for True Strike. Sephron and Zephyr have lost Battle Cry, but have gained Clearfield. I'm guessing... I don't feel like I saw Battle Cry super often, but I think it was used sometimes alongside Watchtowers, so that's probably a change for the best. But they have added Clearfield, which I don't understand the flavor reasons fully, but other people have said is very in flavor with these beasties, so always a big fan of that. Wooly and Fetchum lost Faith in accordance with the Watchtowers losing boosting passes change. Good change. That thing next to a Frufolks was the actual worst. Platena, Platypulse, and Platian have lost Set, but do get the Pipe buff, meaning that they do still have a way to apply Jazz. It's just not quite as oppressive, and especially not quite as oppressive into Mind teams, which previously you could just sort of slot a Mind Weak attacker in the front row, click block repeatedly, even without the easy receive that it had in the previous patch, and click block repeatedly, any Mind moves would get redirected to the Platypulse, and then you can set into your attacker, click Lay Trap, and just continue the cycle of taking very little damage in exchange for a lot of progress. Radillo and Daredillo have lost Forward Pass in exchange for Pipe. That's fine, I guess. Also gained Exhaust, which makes sense because, you know... oh, I get it. It's because they're cars. They've gained Exhaust and Pipe. Very well done, Greg. Very well done. I love this game. TGM says in chat, launch at Ostracite 35. That is where it was before, so no change. Vroom vroom, yes. Fun to see Daredillo get Exhaust. That'll synergize actually pretty nicely with its Acrobat ability. Like if it gets to low HP, it can potentially like click Confident Pass or some similar thing. Maybe Pipe to maybe boost up its ally and then Exhaust to wipe itself, get back onto the field later with full HP, and, you know, be able to take another big hit with Acrobat at the net. Big fan. Noizard lost some Mind Defense. As someone who abused the heck out of this thing in PvP, this is a probably warranted change. Clamor is very good. Are my teams going to suffer a little bit for it? Yes. Do I think it's validated? Yeah, probably. Alrax lost a little bit of Mind Defense and lost Tactical Pass. Players have been vocal about wanting to see this beastie brought down a touch, and we hear you. Although their tractor beam trait is very powerful, we still stand by it as an interesting and skill-expressive tool. What we have seen is that Alrax is often paired with mind-bulky beasties that it can support offensively, allowing it to outramp the other team while keeping them boxed in. We're removing its ability to support offensive ramp in an effort to help it fit into its niche as a passive trapper that can disrupt opponents but doesn't further its own offensive game plan, along the same line of reasoning that led us to remove Assess and Splinter in previous patches. Assess was not actually removed from Albrax, but was removed from other things, I think. Or maybe it was its own Assess or something. But either way, yeah, I think... I'm not sure if it has Assess or not. There might be some version control stuff going on there, no idea. Either way, if it still has Assess, not maybe the biggest issue, but I don't think it does. Either way. A good change overall. I I had mentioned a few times, and other people certainly also had, that they wanted the mind defense to be just a little bit more of an Achilles heel, so the 3 points lost is nice. And yeah, the big issue with Albrecht was that ability to trap something in while also ramping. It now doesn't have the ability to, like, offensively support. It can only disruptively support, so that's super good. Obviously, you still can run an offensive Albrecht itself with stuff like Meditate, which I think is still super fun, because the main issue was never really with the offensive Albrecht sets, it was with the Albrecht sets supporting other mind offensive beasties. Good stuff. Scrub Up, Grubber, and Beetleback finally get Dive back. I am so happy. I have been so sad that Dive was gone off of these beasties for so long. I think it lost them mainly because of how good Juggle Dive used to be before Juggle got nerfed twice. It's the quarterback beastie. They need to have Dive. Also, Beetleback gets Perfect Shot. It has a fantastic mind attack now. Obviously one that's a little conditional on its usage, but with the flavor text in the Beastiepedia being it can aim a Beastieball at targets like 300 feet away, why would it not have Perfect Shot? And Greg heard that, and it has Perfect Shot now, and I'm just so happy, because previously this thing had like no mind attacks. Its best one was like Old Calculation, which is 60 base power, or Rainbow, which is only back row and only targets the back row, so you can't actually aim it. Oh, it's 300 meters, apparently, according to chat. Thank you. I was thinking it was meters, but then that seemed a little bit absurd. Beasties are all powerful, truly. Either way, love to see this thing getting offensive tools, because it's a beastie that has really struggled to actually be offensive, like, at all. Gastick, Whisper, and Mystic get Exhaust back in exchange for losing Exhaust ++ in Old Hex. Goofster has lost Perfect Shot. It was a massive abuser of this move with Plucky, and has gained Ricochet. Greg's reasoning for this is it's the bouncy little guy. The balls hit it and they just bounce right off. So yeah, overall I think a good change. Perfect Shot on Plucky Goofster was honestly quite absurd, considering you could just click Demanding Set off a Bandicraft into it, get +2 immediately, and just blow something up with an unblockable Perfect Shot. So this is overall a good change, meaning that Mind Goofster is gonna basically not be able to get shoved to the front and fire off a giant move every so often. Obviously, can be a threat if it receives an attack at the net because of how Ricochet works now, but it has to receive that attack at the net. It can't be volleyed to. So desetting Goofster gets a much needed nerf. Troglum and Varkamond also get Ricochet. Big fan of Vark getting more options, especially now that it has those defensive buffs that came in last patch to the stats. It's now able to like take an attack at the net and fire off a massive one on its own, which I'm a big fan of. I love this guy. Obviously Ricochet, hard to slot as a solo attack, so it may still necessitate something like Twist. And with the nerf to Twist, I think overall these are still in a pretty good spot balance-wise. Armantis has gained a little bit of body power. Good stuff. Body Armantis always felt really, really underwhelming, and now that it has both True Strike and some more power, it feels a lot more usable. Ricochet gets lost, but it gains Perfect Shot and Splinter. Perfect Shot going to be much more usable for those monster block sets. Sets relying on it being at the net and blocking. Splinter, useful for both, but Perfect Shot, obviously not all that useful with Power Forward, because Jazzed means that Perfect Shot does less damage because it's a feeling that is automatically applied. Comments are, we weren't unhappy with Armantis' power using Ricochet, but the new Ricochet design actively discourages getting blocks, which makes it a terrible fit for Armantis now. True. I'm a little sad that the beastie that is literally holding up 2 planks of wood cannot just bounce the ball off of them anymore, but with the consideration that it really doesn't synergize with the beastie at all, it makes sense. We're giving them some new tools to help preserve their threat level in mind offense, while also giving them some tools to run body offense as an alternative. There is something I particularly want to highlight here, which is this beastie now gets Splinter and Stare Down. I have been using this thing on the experimental build as a Splinter Stare Down Deep Breath user, and it is... This was already a beastie I had a ton of fun using when it was like Sneak Attack Ricochet. I now run no Sneak Attack on this thing, Power Forward, Stare Down, Splinter. You can now lock in a beastie that just got Mind Defense drops which is so cool. I'm even maybe a little bit worried that it could be potentially a little too strong, but I don't think it's going to be, because really it's not as ridiculous as old Ricochet with power forward used to be, so that's fine. Petula, Flourish, and Orgella lose Pipe according with the new effect of the move. Same with Leo Bro and Burst Leiden. Crawler has got Lay Trap. Oh, that's Crawler. Sorry, I thought that was Crabberay for a second when I was reading it. But yeah, no, Crawler gets Lay Trap, which makes a lot of sense. Synergizes super well with its Hunter trait, making it even harder for beasties to switch out, and basically sort of letting this beastie, which is meant to punish switches even harder, giving it another useful support play. Overall, big fan. This beastie has needed a bit of love for a while, and I think it's a good change overall. This beastie, with that said, has seen some decent results in the most recent Big Moon Bash and been actually quite a bit of a threat. There's still some discussion on whether Ambush as a trait, the one that doubles serve damage, is really that worth keeping around, and I'm admittedly undecided on the issue myself. No touching that this patch, but we'll see about it potentially in the future. Either way, Sylusk gets a couple plays in exchange for losing the effectiveness of Perfect Shot, since it obviously is much more affected by block since the change last patch. Gains Freeze Strike and Nerve Strike. Nerve Strike is the concerning one here. This thing is going to be able to output pretty ridiculous damage again, and it notably does not come with costing 2 actions. So this is one to definitely keep an eye on. I think people weren't touching it for a while, but I think next to Watchtowers, this thing is going to be pretty ridiculous again. Which is maybe fine, because again, its body defense is still a massive downside, and True Strike now being added to the game ignores Watchtowers, so Sylusk is not safe from that new move. I think it's still going to be really, really hard for some teams to deal with, but other teams have more tools to help against it now. Overall, we'll see how this one plays out. I think Nerve Strike could be a little too much, but we will see. Zyphosaur finally receives Armored instead of Bunker. Bunker always felt like a bit of a useless trait because it never took 99 damage in PvP anyway. Armored is a nice little change to allow it to basically, if it heals up to full, or if it's at full after a Torch Pass, and that is the most important thing. If it's at 80 stamina after a Torch Pass, but 80 stamina is the maximum, Armored is active, which is super fun. Allows this thing to be a really effective Torch Passer, because this thing is realistically not taking much damage, so you could get 2, maybe even 3 Torch Passes in a game and still be able to switch in safely with this incredibly bulky beastie to some teams. New recruit condition, obviously, because the old recruit condition won't work anymore. Have your same beastie receive 3+ attacks in 1 point. Nice little change. That's a recruit condition we hadn't seen before, and I think it's super in line with Zyphosaur. Yes, overall, great change. Yes, love it. Boldler and its line have learned Shake Off. Good change. Allows more ways for Boldler to heal itself and like reactivate super armor. Good stuff overall. It already had Deep Breath, so it didn't like particularly need this, but it also likes being able to clear its own feelings, which is good. Millimine and Demolipede lost Tactical Pass and Pipe. Less threatening in terms of boosting stuff with Watchtower, but have also gained Clear Field, which is nice. They always felt like they had a bit of a lack of support plays. Like the only support play really worth clicking a lot of the time with this beastie that redirected all attacks to itself was basically Rumble, which, you know, is fine and well, but a lot of teams want this healing support, and this allows a Demolipede in PvP to keep its own HP up just a little bit and maybe allow it to take more attacks now that it's not allowed to shield, while still keeping Watchtower active. Bealb gets a massive body defense buff, 10 extra points, learns Shake Off and Body Ready now. This thing is now, I think by raw stats, according to other people, like the 4th bulkiest beastie in the game, which is terrifying when you consider charge. I messed with this thing in experimental when True Strike was added, and it was absurd, which is why they removed True Strike afterward, because I sent in some replays and was like, this is a lot. With that said, Beal still obviously a massive threat with Energized. Body Ready allows it to buff that move. Still has Power Sack, which is a perfectly serviceable 75 power move. Overall, this beastie was struggling a lot, and threatened even more by the addition of Weepy, so it's nice to have Shake Off to enable it to clear its own feelings. And just more body defense so it can stick around on the field better. In a meta where stuff like Cyclone and Patience and Weepy are going to be running around basically countering this thing on the spot, it can now be a more effective like support or just sustain beastie. Fruitvolks loses 5 spirit power, gains it in body power. This thing next to Watchtowers with Protector was probably public enemy number 3. Just absolutely ridiculous the amount of damage this thing could output with Scream and a bunch of Protector boosts. So tuning back the spirit power a little bit. And also boosting up its body power in exchange, because its body, like, it never really ran body sets, and now there might just be a chance of, like, a Dive Fruitfolk putting in some work with Treat, whereas before it was like, it's not really worth running. Here it's like, well, it's doing significantly more damage now. So, overall, good stuff. Protector's still going to be very good. It's just going to be less oppressive with Faith no longer being on Fetch'em, and Proof no longer having that just like absolutely massive attack stat. Grozada learns Pipe, fun stuff. Droppa and Scaldra have lost forward pass and gained Pipe. Just like a different boosting move here. That's fine. I think sometimes they liked having forward pass, but with the number of beasties that have forward pass, I'm a fan of more beasties getting Pipe instead, honestly. Proteus and Hydrolm get another body power buff, just to enable those body sets a little bit more, especially now that True Strike has been added. Body Hydrolm is really going to be a legitimate player in the meta now, which is fun. When I say the meta, I basically mean like most of all beasties. So that's exciting. Ego Blast added, finally giving this thing a really like solid, reliable mind attack, which was something it lacked before. It had Numb Shot previously, but since that was changed to Stinger, basically it couldn't really rely on anything for mind type damage. Ego Blast is great. It's I believe it's chat, please check if it's 75 or 80 power. I'm not sure. I think Ego Blast got changed to have, I believe, just the plus 15 from rally rather than the rather than the plus 50%. So overall a bit less of a threat than it could potentially have been. But yeah, I mean, this thing loves having a mind attack that it can rely on. Pipe removed, again, just changing the distribution a bit. It's 80 according to Arkwell, thank you. Last beastie here, Diabloceras, added Spitball to level up plays. That makes a lot of sense, only it really affects casual players in some senses, but in other senses, PvP players love this change, because Spitball is something you'd previously have to basically teach it with sports points, or like going to the diner over and over. Whereas Spitball is like the #1 move this beastie uses in PvP. It is one of the best disruptive moves in the game, especially when combined with Overwrite, so I'm glad to see it learn this. Lastly, other fixes and changes. Improve the tutorial game with a lot more guidance and info and fewer interrupting dialogue boxes. Big fan, I get to click the skip cutscene button less than speedruns. Adjusted many encounters across the game to accommodate updated playbooks and balance changes. Thank you, Damien, you're the best. I am glad your hard drive is working again. Expanded the credits set screen under settings with more detailed explanations of everyone's role on the team. Very fun. Inspired by the credits in Demon School. I do not know that game. I'll have to look into it in a little bit. Added the option to sort the Beastiepedia by videographer, showing who the lead animator was for each beastie. Fun stuff. Just nice little thing they've added. Refactored the scale and proportions of several main characters. A lot of characters were originally drawn without proper scale reference, and the result was that proportions were a little all over the place. That's adjusted now. I have no idea which characters these are, but basically, according to Greg, they're just going to be more accurate to their canon heights now. so that's chill. Lighting has been adjusted so that color applies more vividly on 2D characters like beasties and humans. This makes game areas with different lighting colors feel more distinct. Corresponding with this, we adjusted the lighting color in several areas such as Solano Weld and Tawny Wilds, and also Quartz Canyon, notably. And I think, hopefully, this will mean that in a lot of those areas, the colors are a little less blown out than they used to be. Because I feel like in Quartz Canyon in particular, the bright sun used to really like make beasties feel incredibly bright. Now it just feels more distinct rather than like hard to look at because they're just reflecting so much light back at you. Sorry, I put the patch notes back up here. This is what I'm referring to. Them all being a little more faded. Anyway. Back to the rest of the patch notes. When the game originally shipped, team titles were rendered with a drop shadow effect. Later had to change how text was rendered, making it impossible, so they switched to a different boundary box, but could look buggy or unintentional in some contexts, so they've brought the drop shadow back. Cool. Camera angle in sport matches now automatically adjust to accommodate taller opponent beasties. Big fan of this, especially in the case of like Boulder and Schloom. Some beasties were just huge and would actually like make it hard to see things sometimes. Improve the stickiness of selection on beasties while the camera moves in sport matches. Should specifically help with the issue of the corner options menu being selected by default instead of the starting beastie in some occasions. This mostly matters, I think, for controller, but it's going to make it easier to, when you're in a match, let's just get into one real quick where I'm on the left side. If I want to select my beasties, specifically if I'm not in detail mode, let me turn off detail view. It means that it's going to be a whole lot easier to click my Millimine here as opposed to the options menu, which is a good change. Anyway, I'm going to turn detail support view back on because I by far prefer it. I did not show any of that. Let's redo that again real quick. Thank you, Knight, for pointing out that the game capture was not visible. Let's do that again. Basically, this Millimine is a lot more selectable than it previously was because, as you'll note, there's a little bit of space here where my mouse isn't quite on the options menu, but it's still hovering over the options menu. That used to be a lot bigger, so it's a lot easier to click your beasties in the bottom left now. Also, I love the Trogglum animation. Anyway, back to the patch notes. All right, back to it. Adjusted the positioning of fielding effects near beasties in sports games. That's going to be nice. Going to block visuals less, I assume. More visual reinforcement and double confirm checks when beginning a new game with challenge mode settings. Good stuff. Don't want casual players accidentally starting an Iron Man file because that will be a rude awakening and make the game feel a lot more difficult than it actually is for a beginner. In Impossible Iron Man mode, dancing with Sun Tzu now causes your team to be sweaty instead of wiped, since wiped is a much more serious resource cost to heal in that challenge mode. Good change. There are plenty of waters all around the world in Impossible mode, which can cure sweaty but not wiped. And wiped would previously require you to use up one of your railhouse or campsite visits, of which you get one per heal location. Overall, good change. Makes Impossible a little more doable. If you want to fight Sun Tzu, that is. Fixed an obscure crash that could be triggered by some speedrun exploits during tutorial areas. Thank you, Odd Anomaly. Added a special case when encountering an unnumbered digum, enforcing that partner beasties are not additional digums. Good change. The number of times where I have run into a digum and it has had a second digum behind it, meaning it is unrecruitable, is not zero. And that's kind of a problem because if you have multiple digums and not enough other beasties, you cannot recruit any of the digums. So good stuff. More icons to text in the info tab, sure. Extra pop-ups informing when an attack's damage was increased due to received weariness. Big fan. Received weariness is one of the biggest mechanical mysteries in the game to anyone who has not encountered it. And this is nice just because it's gonna basically broadcast when that's happening, when a beastie has received like 7 or 8 or 9 attacks during the same point and is getting tired. In the past, to reduce clutter, some effect pop-ups were skipped when heading into a tough beastie. We have re-enabled some of those pop-ups when playing in games that don't reward experience points, since hiding some activated traits or effects caused savvy players to think there was a bug. Sure. Removed Riley from a certain story scene if it is triggered past a certain point in the plot. I am assuming that is probably the Platinum sponsorship interview with Celia that happens west of Rutile. Not entirely sure, but makes sense. Because if Riley is waiting for you in Rutile proper, obviously she would not be there to accompany you to the interview. Fixed superorganism so it triggers as usual when playing sports problem in Iron Man mode. Good stuff. Niche thing that needed fixing. More enforcement that man-made rubber balls are used for certain story encounters. Good. I love world building. Improved stability and culling of 3D particle effects. Good performance improvements, very minor area layout tweaks to fix bad cameras or collisions. Good stuff. No idea what areas those are, but there have definitely been some cameras, which I've reported in the past, in places like Quartz Canyon and Domain Park, where sometimes you just can't see some of the beasties on the field, and I like being able to see the beasties on the field, actually. Change generation of random teams in PvP such that they have some training points in their stats to better compete with player-built teams. I'm a big fan of that. That means if you're using a random team against a player who might not be as good at PvP, you're still going to be able to keep up because your beasties will be invested where they should be. And also, lastly, change name of Wall the Field effect to Barrier to avoid confusion with Wall the Move. Whew. That was a lot. I just talked for an hour and a half. Let's wrap this up. Let me pull my team together real quick. And we're gonna go fight Barnes. It is almost exactly the right time. I believe I have heard tell that he accepts challenges at 15 past the hour, so hopefully I am not going to be late. I did not intentionally make this perfect, but we're gonna go see if I can do that now. And I believe he spawns west of Domain Park. So let's go do that, listen to his theme, and then we'll call it here. Show game. Thank you. Yes, that would be important. Yep, there's the guy. Oh shit, it's you. It's you, exclamation point. Doing just great in case you were wondering. On my way to a thing right now. Real Hardy, thank you for the mess you made of the league. You're welcome, bro. Tiny slice of the Crimson Racers' income between merch, appearance fees, and I'd figured we'd be coasting for miles, but with the uncertainty about next season, future series, sponsors are getting cold. They're trying to pull out. Damn, dude. Working his ass off to stay relevant. Sure. Oh, I skipped the cutscene. Oh, I skipped the cutscene. Well, shit. Doesn't seem like we can battle him here at the moment. Or maybe he's in my contacts now? Damn. Oh well, I skipped the cutscene. Shit. Well, my bad. What is his movie about? Great question. Probably Beastieball or Cars. One of the two. Anyway, sorry about that. I did not mean to skip the cutscene. I suppose, actually, hold up. I can go back in and try again. Mash through that text real quick. It's clear that he's not going to battle us now, so we won't get to do that, but... yeah. Called me an idiot baby and just noped out? Yeah, pretty much. On brand for him, honestly. Oh, my survey's from an expedition months ago this year. Anyway. Mash through this real quick without hitting the skip cutscene button. Yep, ruined it for everyone. Great, great, great job. Don't have time for this right now. My blood pressure's getting too high. What I really need is a decent Beastieball match. At least you're good for that, aren't you? Come find him by HQ and mainframe sometime. We'll have to let some steam up. Okay. There we go. That's the part I missed. Perfect. You're here for a match. Let me get my team together, bro. Just gonna pull my draft team up. In some order. Let's do that. Let's go. All right, another meeting coming up. Better make it fast. Cool. Does this count for ARC? No, it's post-game. All right, I got my Precise Illigus here. Oh my god, this theme sounds so good in game. Did his team change at all? No, cool. Anyway. I loved the race start sound just into the censored sound. It's so funny. Anyway, they added Eurobeat to Beastieball. It's peak. We're blocking this overpower. It's such a jam. Let's deal some damage, shall we? Move to the back all you like. Gonna block over here again, because it'll still be this slot attacking. Just absolute jam. I should have a point here. Yeah, with 2 traps up, I get a point no matter what here. Nice. 3, 2, 1 fight. Yeah, good one. Very good one, TGM. Hit the sluts, shall we? Oh, I hit the wrong beastie. Okay. Anyway, ooh. So if you whistle Tough Grunt, which might happen here, we'll see if the whistle Tough Grunt comes out. I think it probably will, because Barnes likes applying those feelings. Yeah, okay. So I can actually just get another precise hit off here with more cheers, which is hilarious. Oh, I'm not precise, I'm Trapper. Okay, fair enough. Front row counter will be an issue here, but I can just torch past to like Hopper or something. Alternatively, I could go noisy mode, which I think might be better. Oh, and I have drum on noise mode right now. Cool. I hit the wrong beast. Yeah. Okay. Set drums back up, more boosting. Fernando needs to get out of here, so yeah, there we go. God, this theme is such a jam. He was so obsessed with you. Assumed he'd stay in your orbit. No. No idea what happened to the king, dude. He's in France or something. Anyway, now we definitely torch pass out to Hopera. Oh, and I could click rivals. Sure, let's finish it off with the combo. Fun. Anyway, thank you all for hanging out for the patch note breakdown. This was a real long one. I was not expecting it to take quite this long, but we got there. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for spending this time with me or keeping track of the history of the game or whatever you're doing while you're watching this. Hope it was a useful breakdown if you're watching it in the present day. And other than that, if you enjoy me yapping, consider subscribing, giving the video a like, and follow me on Twitch. We're going to be, obviously, now that there's a new milestone update, there's a whole bunch of speedrun rerouting to do because Dominic has changed a lot and all of the starters have changed significantly. So bear with me soon for those streams. And yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good time zone.